May 10th, 2023. 2:14 in the morning, Bellagio Casino, Las Vegas. The guard's flashlight swept across the narrow vault corridor. Michael Brennan froze. 21 years of routine fixing slot machines, patching cables, invisible to everyone, and now one question could destroy it all. 2 briefcases lay at his feet. Inside them, $25 million in high-denomination chips. One wrong word, and it would all be over. Upstairs, roulette wheels spun and champagne flowed. Down here, in the quiet heart of the Bellagio, the most secure casino in America was seconds away from being breached, and no one had any idea. February 17, 1976, Dayton, Ohio. Michael Brennan was born into a world of broken machinery. By age 12, he could disassemble a radio blindfolded. By 16, he was fixing security systems for local businesses, learning how every lock, sensor, and camera worked, and how they failed. After high school, Brennan drifted between electronics repair jobs, developing an almost supernatural ability to see patterns others missed. In 2001, at 25, he saw a job posting that would change everything. Slot machine technician, Bellagio Hotel and Casino, Las Vegas. For someone who understood machines like Brennan did, it was an invitation to study the most sophisticated security system in the world. March 15, 2002, Bellagio Casino, Las Vegas. For 21 years, Brennan fixed slot machines, patched networks, and moved unseen. Machine Mike, quiet, invisible, forgettable. But as he watched millions flow through the casino, he mapped its flaws. Blind spots in surveillance, vulnerabilities in cash flow, weaknesses buried beneath layers of complexity. By 2021, after layoffs and tighter controls, his loyalty curdled into resentment, and with a deeper understanding of the Bellagio than anyone else alive, Michael Brennan began to plan. March 2021, Brennan's apartment, Las Vegas. The first phase of preparation began with surveillance mapping. Brennan documented camera angles, recorded normal operational footage, and identified the exact sequences he would need to create convincing loops. Using his maintenance access, he discreetly installed micro cameras in key locations, building a library of authentic surveillance footage that could be used to mask future activities. He also began establishing the shell companies and false identities that would be essential for the financial aspects of the heist. Nevada Gaming Equipment Services was incorporated in September 2021, complete with legitimate contracts for minor casino maintenance work. This gave the company credibility and established a paper trail of normal business operations. Over the same period, Brennan created fictional gambling accounts with realistic loss patterns, slowly building the credibility needed for his rebate cascade scheme. October 2022. Various locations. Las Vegas. After 18 months of preparation, the recruitment phase began carefully. Brennan had spent years identifying the right people, employees who felt overlooked, contractors who understood the system's vulnerabilities, players who knew how to move money without attracting attention. Lacey Voss was his first recruit. A former blackjack dealer terminated in 2021 for attitude problems. She had intimate knowledge of card shuffling protocols and chip authentication procedures. Brennan found her working at a downtown casino, bitter and broke. Felix Guerrero ran a small printing business that specialized in security badges and identification cards. His legitimate work gave him access to RFID encoding equipment and high-grade cardstock. More importantly, he owed Brennan a favor from years earlier when Brennan had quietly fixed his son's juvenile record in the casino's background check system. Janet Kolb was the key inside contact. A cashier in the Bellagio's main cage for 6 years, she had grown frustrated watching younger, less experienced employees receive promotions while she remained stuck counting money for 8 hours a day. Brennan had helped her through a difficult divorce, becoming the only person at work she truly trusted. The final piece was Owen Trask, a surveillance technician who had worked night shifts for 3 years. A gambling addiction had left him desperate for money, and Brennan offered him something worth more than cash, a way out of Las Vegas entirely, with enough money to start over anywhere in the world. The plan Brennan outlined was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of a dramatic robbery, they would execute a systematic extraction, making the casino's own systems work against it. Every element would connect. Slot machine malfunctions would create diversions. Counterfeit chips would provide untraceable currency. Surveillance loops would hide their movements, and legitimate-looking transactions would make the theft invisible until it was too late. April 30th, 2023, Brennan's apartment, Las Vegas. The final briefing took place in Brennan's sparse one-bedroom apartment. Maps of the casino covered every wall, marked with maintenance schedules, guard rotations, and camera angles. 2 years of preparation had led to this moment.
The beauty of this system,
Brennan explained to his assembled team,
is that every part supports every other part.
When security is focused on a slot malfunction, they won't notice a chip discrepancy.
When they investigate the chip problems, the surveillance footage will show them exactly what we want them to see. And when they finally realize what's happening, the money will already be gone.
The operation would unfold over 5 days in May, with each day building toward the final extraction. Brennan had calculated that $280 million was the maximum they could steal before the casino's loss prevention algorithms triggered uncontrollable alerts. It was enough to make them all rich beyond imagination, but small enough to stay under the system's critical thresholds until the very end. May 8, 2023, Bellagio Casino. Brennan arrived for his shift at 11 p.m., carrying the same battered toolbox he had used for over 20 years. Tonight, however, it contained more than screwdrivers and diagnostic equipment. Hidden beneath a false bottom was a custom-designed microprocessor, no larger than a credit card, programmed to create cascading failures in the casino's slot machine network. The device had to be installed in the main server hub on the casino's third basement level, a restricted area that only senior technicians could access. Brennan had the clearance, but getting there undetected would require perfect timing. At 11:47 p.m., Brennan descended to B3 using his keycard. The corridors were dimly lit, filled with the constant hum of air conditioning and data servers. He moved quickly but carefully, aware that motion sensors tracked every step. The server room was protected by a biometric scanner, but Brennan had been authorized to access it hundreds of times for routine maintenance. Inside the server room, walls of blinking lights stretched from floor to ceiling. Brennan located the primary slot management hub and opened the main panel. His hands moved with practiced precision, installing the microprocessor between two existing circuit boards where it would be invisible to casual inspection.
Hey, what are you doing down here?
Brennan froze. Behind him stood Dale Richter, a security guard, making an unscheduled patrol. Brennan's mind raced. Had Richter seen him install the device?
routine diagnostics.
Brennan said, closing the panel and turning around slowly.
Got a report of intermittent connectivity issues on the third floor machines. Figured I'd check the server logs before calling it in.
Richter stepped closer, suspicious.
At midnight? That's not standard procedure.
Neither is losing 50 grand an hour to machines that won't take bets.
Brennan replied, keeping his voice steady.
You want to explain to Mr. Castellano why we waited until morning to fix a problem that could cost us 6 figures?
The mention of the casino general manager's name gave Richter pause. After a tense moment, he stepped aside.
Make it quick. I don't like people wandering around down here alone.
Brennan packed his tools, nodded professionally, and walked calmly to the elevator. Only when the doors closed did he allow himself to breathe. The device was installed. In 6 hours, it would activate, and the real operation would begin. At 5:43 a.m., as the morning shift arrived, slot machines across the casino floor began experiencing random malfunctions. Nothing dramatic, just enough errors to require immediate attention from the technical staff. By 6 a.m., every available technician was troubleshooting machines, leaving other systems temporarily understaffed. Brennan clocked out at 7 a.m., another invisible night shift ending. Phase 1 was complete. May 9th, 2023, Bellagio Casino. The morning brought controlled chaos. Slot machines continued failing in seemingly random patterns, forcing management to pull technicians from other duties. Meanwhile, Voss and Guerrero began introducing counterfeit chips into circulation through carefully coordinated play. The fake chips were masterworks of forgery, identical to authentic Bellagio chips down to the embedded RFID tags. Guerrero had spent months perfecting the manufacturing process, while Voss had identified the precise timing and table locations where new chips could enter the system without triggering authentication protocols. At 2:15 p.m., Voss sat down at a mid-limit poker table with $5,000 in genuine chips and $15,000 in counterfeits. She played conservatively, occasionally losing small amounts while gradually replacing authentic chips with fakes. To observers, she was just another player having a mediocre afternoon. At the same time, Brennan was implementing the surveillance phase. Using his maintenance access, he entered the casino's basement tunnel system to install loop transmission devices. These small transmitters would intercept camera feeds and replace them with the pre-recorded footage he had captured over the previous months, creating blind spots throughout the casino. The tunnels beneath the Bellagio were a maze of service corridors, utility lines, and forgotten passages. Brennan had mapped every inch over 20 years, identifying routes that connected all major areas of the casino without passing through monitored zones. As he installed the third loop device near the main cashier cage, motion sensors detected his presence. Immediately, security radios crackled with alerts about unauthorized movement in restricted areas. Brennan had 30 seconds before guards arrived. He quickly finished the installation and moved deeper into the tunnels, using a maintenance passage that led to the loading docks. Behind him, he could hear footsteps and radio chatter as security teams swept the area.
Delta 7, we've got empty corridors down here. Whatever triggered the sensors is gone.
Copy that. Probably just equipment vibration. The HVAC system's been acting up all week.
Brennan emerged from the tunnels through a service exit near the employee parking garage, disguised in the uniform of a vending machine contractor. He carried a clipboard and tool belt that made him look like any other service worker. Even if security cameras caught him, they would see nothing suspicious, just another maintenance contractor finishing his rounds. By evening, the surveillance loop system was active. Critical areas of the casino were now under Brennan's control, showing security personnel exactly what he wanted them to see while hiding his team's actual movements. May 10, 2023, Bellagio Casino. The largest single movement would happen today. Brennan had designed a rebate cascade, a complex series of transactions that would use the casino's own promotional systems to legitimize massive payouts to shell companies he controlled. The scheme exploited a vulnerability in the Bellagio's customer loyalty program. High-value players could receive rebates on losses, comped services, and promotional credits that could be converted to cash under certain circumstances. Brennan had created fictional players with elaborate gambling histories, complete with forged documentation and believable loss patterns spanning several years. 10 a.m., Cole began processing rebate requests for these fictional accounts. Each transaction appeared legitimate in isolation, but together, they would transfer over $80 million from the casino's promotional accounts to bank accounts Brennan controlled. The beauty of the rebate cascade was its invisibility. Unlike stolen chips or missing cash, promotional rebates were expected transactions that rarely triggered security reviews. The fictional players had realistic gambling patterns built up over months of simulated activity, making their large rebate requests appear routine. At 1:30 p.m., Brennan triggered a false fire alarm in the casino's north wing. While guests evacuated and staff responded to the emergency, he accessed a restricted chip storage vault through a hidden maintenance panel he had modified years earlier. The vault contained millions in high-denomination chips, stored in automated dispensers that supplied the main cage during busy periods. Brennan had studied the vault's security systems extensively, learning that the biometric locks could be bypassed during emergency conditions when staff needed rapid access to secure areas. Inside the vault, Brennan worked quickly, filling specially designed briefcases with chips worth $25 million. The cases were disguised as electronic test equipment, complete with fake labels and documentation that would pass casual inspection. As he prepared to leave, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Brennan froze, realizing a security guard was conducting a sweep during the fire alarm response, not evacuating as protocol suggested. The guard entered the vault area, flashlight sweeping the walls.
Hello? Anyone down here? Security sweep in progress.
Brennan had hidden behind a bank of chip dispensers, but the space was too small to remain concealed if the guard conducted a thorough search. He made a desperate decision, stepping out with his hands visible.
Thank God. I was checking the automated systems when the alarms went off. Got turned around in the dark.
The guard, a young man named Caleb Yates who recognized Brennan from previous encounters, relaxed slightly.
Jesus, Mike, you scared me. I'm doing emergency sweeps before the all clear. What were you doing down here during an alarm?
Emergency protocols. These dispensers can jam during power fluctuations. If the fire department cuts main power, we could lose millions in chips to mechanical failures. I brought diagnostic equipment to run system checks.
Yates started to move toward the exit, then stopped. Something had caught his attention. A small piece of torn fabric on the edge of a chip dispenser, evidence of Brennan's hasty concealment.
Wait a minute!
Yates said, turning back.
That fabric wasn't there this morning. What were you really doing down here?
The confrontation escalated quickly. Yates reached for his radio to call for backup, but Brennan couldn't let that happen. He lunged forward, knocking the radio from Yates' hand. The two men struggled in the narrow space between chip dispensers, both fighting for control. 20 years on Yates, but was smaller and out of shape. The younger man was stronger, but Brennan fought with the desperation of someone whose entire plan depended on remaining undetected. They crashed into equipment, sending chips scattering across the floor. Finally, Brennan managed to grab a heavy diagnostic scanner and struck Yates in the shoulder. The guard stumbled backward, hitting his head on a metal support beam. He collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Brennan checked Yates's pulse, confirming he was alive, then used zip ties from his toolbox to secure the guard's hands and feet. He placed a maintenance rag in Yates' mouth as a gag, ensuring he couldn't call for help when he regained consciousness. Working quickly, Brennan gathered the scattered chips and his equipment, then activated the vault's emergency lockdown procedures. This would buy him several hours before anyone discovered Yates, enough time to complete the day's operation. Brennan escaped through the maintenance tunnels, carrying $25 million in chips and leaving behind clear evidence of a struggle. When Yates was found 3 hours later, he could only provide a vague description of his attacker, a casino maintenance worker with access to restricted areas. By midnight on May 10th, Brennan's team had successfully extracted $150 million from the Bellagio through various channels: counterfeit chips, rebate cascades, and direct theft from secure storage. The casino's loss prevention systems were showing anomalies, but nothing that couldn't be explained by equipment malfunctions and processing delays. They were halfway to their goal, but the most dangerous phase was yet to come. May 11th, 2023, Las Vegas Strip. News of the previous day's incident had reached law enforcement. The attack on Yates, combined with growing evidence of systematic financial irregularities, prompted Las Vegas Metropolitan Police to launch a coordinated investigation with Nevada Gaming Control Board agents. Detective Nora Blackwood had worked casino fraud cases for 8 years. She knew that successful heists required inside knowledge, careful planning, and usually left traces that experienced investigators could follow. The Bellagio case was different, too sophisticated, too clean, with too many moving parts to be the work of ordinary criminals. At 9 a.m., police established surveillance on key Bellagio employees, focusing on anyone with access to the areas where irregularities had been detected. Brennan's name appeared on a list of persons of interest, but his 20-year employment record and clean background made him seem like an unlikely suspect. Brennan was aware that scrutiny was intensifying. He had planned for this moment, preparing a misdirection that would buy his team the time needed to complete the operation. At 11 a.m., police arrested 3 low-level associates, small-time criminals Brennan had deliberately recruited as decoys months earlier. These decoys were completely separate from his core team. These men had been given minor roles in fake schemes designed to attract attention. Their arrests provided investigators with apparent leads to follow, while Brennan's real team remained hidden. The decoys didn't know about the larger operation. They believed they were part of a small-scale chip counterfeiting ring worth maybe $50,000. While police interrogated the decoys, Brennan prepared for the next critical phase. Moving physical assets out of the casino required perfect coordination between his remaining team members. At 3:45 p.m., Brennan entered the Bellagio through the employee entrance, carrying forged work orders authorizing the removal of defective slot machine components for off-site repair. The orders appeared legitimate, complete with supervisor signatures and shipping documentation from Nevada Gaming Equipment Services. In the loading dock area, Brennan had positioned shipping crates labeled as containing electronic equipment. Security footage would show routine maintenance activity. Workers loading casino equipment for repair or replacement, something that happened dozens of times each week. The plan began to unravel when Detective Blackwood decided to personally observe the loading dock operations. She had noticed the timing correlation between equipment removals and financial discrepancies, leading her to suspect that stolen assets were leaving the building disguised as legitimate shipments. At 4:20 p.m., Blackwood watched from an unmarked car as Brennan and two hired contractors loaded crates into a truck marked Nevada Gaming Equipment Services. The company was legitimate. Brennan had established it years earlier as part of his long-term planning, but Blackwood's instincts told her something was wrong. She radioed for backup and began following the truck as it left the Bellagio. The pursuit wound through Las Vegas traffic, with Blackwood maintaining surveillance from a distance while additional units moved to intercept. Brennan realized he was being followed when the same sedan appeared in his mirrors through 3 consecutive turns. He had planned escape routes for this scenario, but executing them meant abandoning millions in stolen assets loaded in the truck behind him. The chase intensified as police units began converging on Brennan's location. He made a desperate decision, driving the truck into the Bellagio's employee parking structure and abandoning it in the maze of service tunnels beneath the casino. Brennan knew these tunnels better than anyone. He had spent 20 years mapping every passage, identifying routes that connected to storm drains, utility corridors, and forgotten maintenance areas. While police secured the truck and its contents, Brennan disappeared into the underground maze. The truck contained $45 million in chips and cash. But Brennan had accepted this loss as the price of remaining free. The 2 hired contractors were arrested at the loading dock, but they knew nothing about the larger operation and had been paid cash for what they believed was legitimate work. Detective Blackwood found herself standing in an empty tunnel, flashlight beam revealing only concrete walls and discarded equipment. Brennan had vanished as completely as if he had never existed. May 12 through 13, 2023, Bellagio Casino. With increased police surveillance and 2 associates in custody, Brennan knew the operation had to conclude quickly. The final phase would require the greatest risk but offered the largest potential reward: a direct assault on the casino's main vault. The Bellagio's central vault contained the cash reserves used to back high-limit gaming, typically holding between $50 and $100 million in various denominations. Access required multiple security clearances, biometric authentication, and time-locked systems that opened only during scheduled periods. Brennan had spent years studying the vault's operations, learning that transfers to armored car services created temporary vulnerabilities. During these windows, security protocols were relaxed to allow rapid loading of large cash amounts. On May 12, Brennan used his access to the casino's scheduling systems to create a false armored car pickup. The fraudulent order appeared to come from the casino's banking partners, requesting an emergency cash transfer due to irregular audit findings. Such transfers were unusual but not unprecedented, especially given the recent security incidents. Kolb, still operating from inside the main cage, processed the authorization codes needed to unlock the vault during non-standard hours. Her access credentials made the false transfer appear legitimate to automated security systems. The armored transport was the most complex part of the operation. Guerrero had spent over a year establishing relationships with struggling security companies, eventually purchasing the assets and credentials of a firm facing bankruptcy. This gave him legitimate armor-plated vehicles, uniforms, and documentation that would pass inspection. At 2:30 a.m. on May 13th, the armored truck arrived at the Bellagio's loading dock. Guerrero presented credentials identifying him as the transport supervisor, while Trask had positioned himself in the surveillance room to ensure the security feeds showed routine armored car procedures. Inside the vault, Kolb worked with additional temporary staff, criminals Brennan had recruited specifically for the final phase, to load the truck with cash reserves. The surveillance feeds were actually the pre-recorded loops Brennan had installed, showing normal overnight operations while hiding the massive theft in progress. The real brilliance of the operation was its timing. The theft occurred during a shift change, when day and night security teams were transitioning, and communication was typically disrupted. By the time discrepancies were noticed, the truck had left the building with $175 million in cash. Brennan himself was nowhere near the Bellagio during the final extraction. He had learned from the previous day's close call, positioning himself across the city with an airtight alibi. When police later reviewed his time card records, they would find that he had clocked out at 11 p.m. on May 12th and never returned. The armored truck disappeared into Las Vegas traffic, following a predetermined route to a warehouse Brennan had rented under one of his shell companies. There, the cash was divided and loaded into vehicles for transport to various banks and financial institutions across the Southwest. By dawn on May 13th, $280 million had been extracted from the Bellagio through a combination of digital transfers, physical theft, and systematic fraud. The net extraction was $150 million through rebate cascades and counterfeit chips by May 10th, minus $45 million lost in the abandoned truck on May 11th, plus $175 million in cash from the vault on May 13th, totaling exactly $280 million. The money trail was deliberately complex, spreading assets across dozens of accounts and institutions to prevent easy recovery. Brennan's team scattered according to plan. Kolb and Trask were arrested within 48 hours, but their knowledge was limited to their specific roles. Guerrero successfully fled to Mexico with his share of the proceeds. Voss disappeared entirely, taking advantage of her expertise in identity manipulation to begin a new life. The last confirmed sighting of Michael Brennan was at 7:15 a.m. on May 14th, when security cameras at McCarran International Airport captured a man matching his description boarding a flight to Istanbul. The passenger manifest listed him as Clayton Pierce, traveling on a passport that investigators later determined was expertly forged.